Welcome to the slightly delayed This Month in Games for September and early October 2020. Lots of exciting new titles this month, so let's get started. The original Tony Hawk's Pro Skater came out in 1999 on the PlayStation, and it rocked the industry at the time. Developer Neversoft had made a game that captured as accurately as possible the skills, stunts, and excitement from the world of professional skateboarding. Many ports and sequels followed, but eventually the series wound down. But both skateboarding fans and the love they had for Tony Hawk never went away, so when Activision announced a remaster of the first two games, excitement ran high. But would a different developer be able to capture the same energy that had propelled the original games to such heights? And did gamers still want to play a game more than 20 years old? Turns out the answers were yes and yes. The graphics and visuals look fantastic, and the gameplay is still easy to learn and difficult to master. The same skate parks from the first two games are recreated in far more detail than the originals. They can, at times, feel a bit small, but the game isn't limited to the parks that shipped with the original two games. There's a new Create a Park feature that allows players to make and share their own visions of the perfect park. I'm still just as terrible at the game as I was at the original, but it is a lot of fun to play. Another remaster, or is it? No, this is the first entirely new game in the Crash Bandicoot series since 2010's Nitro Kart 2. The success of the two remasters, 2017's Insane Trilogy and 2019's Crash Team Racing, made this new game possible. Despite being entirely new, Crash 4 doesn't mess with the formula. You control the titular Bandicoot as he runs through a bunch of platforming challenges, spinning around like a Tasmanian devil in order to explode boxes and pick up fruit. There is a Saturday morning cartoon-like plotline as the evil doctors Entropy and Neocortex rip a hole in space and time using a floating voodoo mask, and you and your sister Coco team up to stop these doctors and their invading armies. The platforming controls are smooth, and since you start out with a double jump and there's a handy cursor showing where you're going to land, the game rarely feels unfair. Occasionally some odd things can happen, like when the perspective shifts to a largely two-dimensional view, and yet you can still miss grabbing a vine because you aren't perfectly lined up on the compressed depth axis. But given the generous helping of checkpoints and the default modern mode, where if you die you respawn at the nearest one, it rarely feels frustrating. The challenges, as in all Crash games, come from trying to get bonuses by grabbing all of the fruit, or not getting hit, or completing a level under a certain time. Passing challenges gets you diamonds that you can then exchange for bonuses, like new outfits. It's really fun and a great game for families. This is a game that I never thought would come out. First-person, in-cockpit, spaceship dogfighting simulators haven't really been a thing since the release of Free Space 2 over 20 years ago. Back in the day, there were multiple franchises in this genre. My favorite was Wing Commander, but the definitive game was always X-Wing and its companion TIE Fighter series. These games put you in the cockpit of a Rebel or Empire fighter and brought the movies to life in ways that nothing else could. But times and fads changed. The space dogfighting genre seemed dead forever. Well, I'm happy to report that it has been reborn, and better than ever. Star Wars Squadrons has a single-player story, a multiplayer component, and even comes with a built-in toggle that will enable virtual reality mode for anyone with a compatible headset. Even more astounding to me is the fact that it supports not only gamepads, but works by default with any joystick and throttle combination, including my ancient Microsoft Sidewinder Force Feedback 2, which dates back to the days of Free Space 2 and these days barely works with anything. If you don't have a joystick, the default gamepad controls can be a little confusing, but fortunately they can be customized. So here I am, sitting with my VR helmet on, holding my joystick in my lap, blasting away TIE fighters from my X-Wing, and feeling like a little kid again. Only a little kid whose wildest video game dreams have come true. It's a fantastic achievement, and proof that good genres can never really die. The original Spelunky was a 2008 indie roguelike platformer where you dug deep into randomly generated two-dimensional mines to defeat monsters and collect treasure. It had a small but passionate fan base of players who would often log in every day to play new challenges and trials. The sequel has the player controlling Anna, the daughter of the explorer from the first game. There are brand new areas and a new physics system that lets fluids like water and lava flow naturally through a level. The creator of the first game teamed up with an indie studio to help create the sequel, so the game has a new and polished look. It's worth picking up if you want a fun platformer that has staying power. Wintermoor Tactics Club is a beautiful isometric turn-based tactics game with role-playing elements. You control a group of nerds who run their private high school's equivalent of a Dungeons & Dragons club and who must use their knowledge of tactics to survive a school-wide and principal-approved snowball war. It's a fun blend of fantasy and reality and worth picking up if you like tactics games. Iron Harvest is a real-time strategy game set in an alternate universe where World War I was fought not only with rifles, but also steam-powered walking mech units. In the single-player campaign, you play as Anna Kos, the daughter of a scientist and inventor who lives in Polania, an alternate reality Poland that has been invaded by the Rusviet army. You have a rifle and a friendly bear, as well as dozens of friendly soldiers and mechs at your disposal. The game focuses on controlling groups with a single command and makes heavy use of cover mechanics, so it's a bit different from games like StarCraft where you have to control each individual unit. Still, it's much better if you can use a mouse and keyboard. The multiplayer community is small but passionate. Worth picking up for the story alone. Spiritfarer is a unique role-playing game. You play as the newly appointed fairy woman for recently deceased souls, piloting a large, customizable boat through uncharted isles in the realm between the living world and the afterlife. While you're ferrying your newfound friends, you need to make sure they're happy by giving them hugs, cooking them their favorite foods, and figuring out what tasks they have left unfulfilled that prevent them from crossing over to the other side. You can go ashore on islands to pick up supplies and crafting materials like trees. To do the latter, you and your cat, yes, your cat, stand on each side and your ghostly multi-tool morphs into a saw that you move back and forth. The game is beautiful, slow, sometimes sad, and surprisingly moving. It's a game that will make you think about things and ask yourself questions about the meaning of life and death. Strongly recommended. Well, that's all for this month in games. See you next month!